So Wendy and I just returned last night from a conference. There's a vineyard conference every year, and since we're part of the leadership, they bring us out. We do work in a couple days in a room, but they always connect it to this giant thing called Exponential. Thousands of people come to this giant Baptist church in Orlando called First Baptist. It's like this huge campus. And for one of the breakouts after our time, some of the leaders, Jay Pathick, who I showed you a couple of weeks ago, and Caleb Maskell, who's our theologian, smart dude, they were doing a little breakout on healing and signs and wonders. And so I thought, well, I'm gonna go be supportive. I'll go attend. And they put us out in this original chapel, and I don't know what it held, but the place was packed. There were no seats. People were sitting on the floor. People were outside the doors. And it was just real practical. They just talked about, some key verses about healing and how God heals and how God uses us to pray for people. And then they do a little practicum. And I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm kind of good at this. I'm going to pray for somebody, be supportive. And then right before they invited anyone who wanted healing, I just felt this little nudge, you should get prayed for. And I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with me. I'll pray for it. I'm good. And then I wear these little hearing helpers. They're really secret agent hearing helpers. That's why you don't notice them. And I felt like the Lord said, get prayer for your ears. And so I'm all right. So I stand up, and there's, some people come around you, and they weren't like vineyard people. They were just people there that wanted to learn about this stuff. And there were about 3 praying for me. And this one girl, she's just real intense. She's looking at me. She's got her hand on my ear. And she says, when did you notice your hearing was going bad? And I said, I noticed during COVID because of the mass. I had been reading lips. And she said, she just starts crying, just tears running down her face. And I'm like, I wonder why she's crying about this. So we go on a little bit longer, and then she says, no, they kind of finish up, and then she comes back around, and we're kind of done, but she says, can I pray for you some more? And I said, sure. And I said, why were you so emotional? And she said, because I'm a violinist, and during COVID, I lost my hearing, and I thought my life was over, and then God healed me. And she says, I just don't think it's an accident that I'm praying for you right now. And I said, are you Vineyard? And she goes, no, I'm from someplace. And she goes, there's a Vineyard church in my town, and they've had some leadership turnover. And a few years ago, the founding pastor, there was moral failure, and the church went from thousands to 100, almost just wiped out. And she says, so I've kind of been watching that church, but I don't know if I trust him, if I want to go there. And I said, where do you live? And she says, I live in California. I said, where do you live in California? She said, I live in San Luis Obispo. And I said, San Luis Obispo? Well, if you know the backstory, my mentors, Rick and Becky Olmsted, when this church almost died, they came out of retirement to resuscitate it, and they're the current leaders there now. I said, well, I can tell you one thing, you can trust the leaders if you want to try that church. And I'm just thinking, how incredible is God? Sometimes the thing isn't the thing. I don't think the healing of my ears was the thing. I'd like to tell you, hey, yeah, I'm great, but I think it was so this girl would find this church in her hometown, and we're way out in Orlando, and all this happened. So that's my testimony for this morning, and I hope that might encourage you a little bit. So let's stand.